have no doubt that he will live a productive life, because we are going to fight for that every step of the way. But we have to fight for that every step of the way.
A fight with no end in sight. How the story of one child with autism and his unlikely friendship speaks for itself.
How do you let someone sleep out at night? You know, how do you not help your fellow man get to where they need to go?
A refuge for the homeless is facing serious financial troubles. Now, the only shelter in Alamance County fights to keep its doors open.
Orthodox guy were to come in here and say, "You're not a rabbi," I'm like, "I am." Next.
Meet the rabbi who's defying stereotypes and tradition as she tries to blaze a trail in the Jewish religion.
You're watching 30 Minutes.
1 in 59 children in the United States is diagnosed with autism every year. Common therapies include music, art, and swimming. But there's one innovative program in Colfax, North Carolina, using an old means of transportation to help transform the lives of young children with autism, like Cale Baumgartner. He's a little boy, 6 years old, and always on the move.
Need help?
He destroys things pretty quickly.
He's like a wild child.
What?
When he gets into Dr. Destructo mode, we don't even say we can't have nice things anymore, we just say we can't have things.
Cale is the youngest of Monica and Sean Baumgartner's 4 kids.
What are you doing?
Monica is a full-time mom, and Sean works as a mechanical engineer. At 2.5 years old, Cale was diagnosed with autism and a sensory processing disorder. Now 6, he struggles to speak.
What did it feel like to kind of realize that his speech stopped?
It was extremely scary. It was devastating, absolutely devastating, because you almost grieve.
We brought those to a doctor and they said, no, there's nothing wrong. As parents, you intuitively know something much faster than anybody who's doing a diagnosis, right?
Despite speech difficulties, Cale had no problem making a lifelong best friend. His name is Getty, and he's a 600-pound horse. Cale looks forward to seeing him every single week at Horsepower, a hippotherapy program in Colfax, North Carolina. Hippotherapy is an umbrella term for using horses as a part of speech, physical, and occupational therapy. For Cale, the movements of the horse help improve his motor skills, and the lessons help develop his speech.
Say walk on.
Okay.
Good walk on.
It's very obvious. He knows when we're coming here, and he's ready. And he loves to put on his little boots. It's like he knows, okay, I'm going to come here and I'm going to get what I need. He loves his horse.
The key to hippotherapy is finding the right horse for the right student. Certified instructor and speech pathologist Perry Flynn started the program 25 years ago.
What are some personality traits in Cale that you maybe think are compatible with Getty?
So Cale is very happy, joyful, joyous, and Getty's a little sort of a grumpy old man. And so I think Cale sort of lightens Getty up.
Both Getty and Cale are very stubborn. So, you'll see Getty eating grass when he's not supposed to. Cale would hop right down there and eat it with him if he could sometimes.
Say thank you. Good. A common misconception is that the horse is doing all the work and you're just sort of sitting there going along for the ride. But I think that if you watch it carefully, you see that there is a lot of physicality that's going on. I think horses are smarter than a lot of people give them credit for. They recognize that those people have disabilities and they sort of need a little help.
After Cale's riding lessons, Flynn's graduate students work with Cale to get him to say 1 or 2 words.
Apple. Apple. Good word. There's your apple.
Is it frustrating sometimes to not really know what's going on?
Oh, I would do anything to be in his head for just a little while. I mean, there are times that he can't communicate what he wants, or, if something hurts, he's stemming more and he's jumpy and he's slapping his legs, and it's like, is there something else going on?
And the Baumgartners are no stranger to challenges.
Where's Evan?
Sean and Monica had a son named Evan who died from a genetic disorder after only 6 days. Monica, you had a really interesting point describing your feeling as grief when you actually went through grief.
How are those two comparable? Are they comparable?
We still grieve Evan. I mean, we grieve the loss of his life. And with Cale, it's very similar, is we grieve the loss of what we thought his life was going to be. With Cale, I mean, he's going to survive, but everything about him changed like that. Every hope we had for him, his future, it wasn't he's going to go to school, go to college, get married, I mean, I still grieve what I thought he was going to have.
You see what he may lose at that point in time as you're going through and processing, not what he's going to gain.
Do you ever feel like you just want to give up?
Giving up is not fair.
It's not so much you want to give up, because I never want to give up on my child. It's exhausting when you think about the future. I mean, and some days you're gung-ho, I can face this head on, I can do this, I can advocate for him, and then some days it is literally soul-crushing to think of what it is going to entail.
Monica takes Cale to 5 different types of therapies every week. He does traditional speech and physical therapy on top of music, swimming lessons, and horsepower.
So how do you find time for yourself?
Was that a joke?
Sean reminded me, it's been a year since I've got my hair done. I need to do that. But then I just try. I mean, it's like I can't come up with a time when I can do that.
Cale's therapies are all designed to build off of each other to help him become more independent. But the financial and emotional costs are high, at home and at work.
There is a lot of pressure that I must perform. I can't be just as good as anybody else. I have to be a standard deviation of anybody else who does my job, because I have to be able to put myself in a high-paying position to make sure we have good insurance.
Despite the costs, Cale's parents say the benefits are worth it.
Anytime he can be on a horse, I will put him on a horse.
According to a study in the American Journal of Occupational Therapy, children with autism who participated in hippotherapy for 12 weeks showed improvements in their posture, ability to participate in daily activities, and communication skills.
What about a horse is making this all possible?
I wish I could tell you. I wish I knew. It's it's one of those intangible things, I think, that we can't explain, can't quantify. Let's go.
And while the horses make a big difference, so does the instructor.
I love that you're wearing the hat. That is so great.
Are you proud of Cale?
I am proud of Cale. He has worked hard to get to the point where he is, and it's not always easy for him to keep it all together, and he is increasingly able to do that.
His relationship with Perry, have you seen that kind of grown over the years?
Yes, he loves Perry. And I think it goes back to, I'm going to come here, I'm going to get my sensory needs met.
Perry's a part of that?
Oh, Perry's a huge part of that. So, yes, Perry is wonderful with Cale.
Carrots.
Wow.
Yeah, he wants carrots.
So what progress have you seen in him since being here?
A lot. Being on the horse, it regulates him. The motion of the horse settles him, gives him the input that he needs to help him focus. And the effects are long-lasting.
When he's had horsepower, he will go to sleep much faster. He will typically eat better. He will typically focus better if he has homework.
His body is getting what it needs so his mind can focus more to do the tasks that he needs to do.
How long did that process take to where he was pretty nonverbal to slowly starting to speak again?
It's still a process.
Yeah.
He still doesn't, he doesn't want to talk a lot. He would prefer just to, pull me wherever and, try to make me do stuff without talking.
He's 6. He's at a very influential age. So when, you're at that time of life, we want to try to give it much advantage as humanly possible to, to be a contributing member of society.
And as for his future,
he does have life skills. He potty trained. He can go through the line at school and get his lunch and, do all the things for himself. And that's something that we just continue to work on and hope he is independent and on his own. So that's one of our goals.
Can I have a kiss? Mwah. So I want you to finish this sentence.
Okay.
Being Cale's mom means?
It means I'm a mom. He's my kid. He's my child. I mean, you know, he's my kid. Yeah, I'm just his mom, trying to do what's best for him.
I want him to be happy, you know, to feel like his life has meaning and purpose. I want him to struggle and experience life in the best way that he can.
I have no doubt that he will live a productive life because we are going to fight for that every step of the way. But we have to fight for that every step of the way.
You've dealt with a lot, the loss of a child with autism. How do you stay hopeful?
You've got to look all across that, and you know, and just like as you guys were setting up, and he's playing with his cars with the camera, and he's trying to figure out what you're doing, and he's having you focus your cars on, or your cameras on his cars. Yeah, that's, to me, that was joy. I mean, you were watching him do something. You were watching him interact with neurotypical people. You were watching him develop right in front of your eyes. If you don't enjoy that along the way, you're going to get to you're heading down a road to nowhere, you know. And so I mean, you have to look at the process that you're going through and understand that that's part of the enjoyment. It's not just one big goal. It's a whole bunch of a million little things.
Every step is a victory.
Exactly.
More than 500,000 people were homeless in the United States last year. 9,000 of those people live here in North Carolina. For the homeless in Alamance County, there's only one place to go: Allied Churches. But this homeless shelter is in trouble. If it is forced to shut down, the hungry and poor will have few options. Now, the community is looking for ways to save this last hope for the homeless.
I will find some way and some means to find somewhere dry to sleep tonight. Last night I slept out in the field in a sleeping bag with my poncho over top of my sleeping bag, and at 4:30 this morning the raindrop hit me right dead on the tip of my nose.
William Clontz says he's been homeless for about 6 months, which has been the most difficult time of his life. As the only homeless shelter in this area, Allied Church's mission has been to serve people such as Clontz. However, the shelter now faces serious financial struggles, ones that could force its doors to close.
There's a lot of people that are living there right now that are very concerned about, about their future.
After he says the bank foreclosed on his house in May, Clontz stayed for 30 days at Allied Churches before returning to the streets.
I mean, it was really cold out there, but I've got a 0 below sleeping bag, and I've got a blanket and a pillow and a tarp that I can put over my sleeping bag. And I really, I'm 48 years old, I'm an adult. Nobody brought me to where I'm at but God and myself, God and these 2 feet.
Allied Churches is currently home for 43 people, which is more than 80% of Burlington's homeless population. But that is not the only group of people the shelter serves. With 30,000 people living in poverty in Alamance County, Allied Churches could be a future safe haven for more individuals. The shelter provides basic necessities for the community, like housing placement and hot meals, things that Clontz no longer receives and that some people might take for granted.
I'm concerned about where I'm going to get my next shower and my next meal at, because the weekend's coming up, and I'm just concerned about that. But, I mean, if that's the only way I've got to live, then I'm not going to give up, I'm going to wrap up in my sleeping bag and throw a tarp over it, and I'll find somewhere to sleep.
But the shelter is facing dramatic changes. In October, the executive director and 5 other staff members were laid off after the shelter ran out of money to pay them. Kelly Paul, chair of the board of directors for Allied Churches, says without taking drastic measures, the shelter situation would be much worse than it is now.
But we had to cut expenses, and we had to cut them quickly. But if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be housing people in need right now.
So you wouldn't be open if you didn't make those cuts?
Yeah, it was pretty much at that point that we could either continue to house people, or we could eliminate a couple of positions that would save us enough money to continue operating.
Community partners donated more than $80,000 to the shelter after its financial situation became public in a Burlington Times news article in September. But the problems are far from over. The board says while the money helps keep Allied Churches open, it is not uncommon for the shelter to receive most of its donations during the holiday months.
My concern is have people given earlier as opposed to given additional, because that could impact us as we head into February.
So you think it could potentially kind of stop?
Yeah, that's what we're paying real close attention to. We have a lot of other groups that have come up and are doing fundraisers, which we're thrilled for, but we are paying real close attention to make sure that we aren't losing dollars that we would expect to receive later.
Jay Baker has been serving as the interim shelter manager since October. He says he and his staff must evaluate the shelter's economic structure. If this latest round of donations dries up, the shelter could close, forcing its residents to fend for themselves.
Would hope that some would be resilient, but the obvious answer is that some individuals would be on the street.
Is that the reality of it?
That would be the reality if no one was taking care of the homeless population, yes.
Because there's no other place for them to go.
There's no other place for them to go.
What's the closest place for them to go?
Greensboro, Raleigh, or Durham. So how would they get there? What would you do? Those are things. Those are the biggest questions.
Are those things that concern you? You think about a
Yes.
lot?
Yes. Yep. What would we do? Who's going to help them? Who's going to provide those services? At what magnitude are they going to provide those services? So there's a lot of questions.
If Allied Churches closed, shelters in Greensboro are 22 miles from Burlington, whereas the closest shelter in Durham is 36 miles away. This could mean the homeless would have to walk anywhere from 7 to 12 hours to get there.
What would happen if the shelter did close?
That'd be awful. How do you let someone sleep out at night? How do you not help your fellow man get to where they need to go?
Why should people care about what's going on at Allied Churches? What would you say to them?
Why not care? Homelessness is a real problem. And if your total life's concern is just about yourself, then that is not really what we're living for.
For someone who says, I won't be homeless, that won't happen to me, what would you say to them?
I say it all the time. We're only one decision away from being homeless.
What kinds of decisions could these be?
For some individuals, it could be the decision of which bill I pay. For some individual, it could be whose friend's house I'm entering to hang out in or stay over in the next 15, 20 minutes. It could be accepting a ride from someone. It could be anything.
For years, Allied Churches' finances declined, but recently hit a rough patch. According to the shelter's IRS tax forms, employee salaries collectively dropped $85,000 between 2015 and 2016. Donations and grants from churches and businesses also dropped more than $225,000.
We were started by a group of churches that had a calling and a need to help the homeless in our area. But as years have evolved and churches have evolved, we now know that churches have their own issues as well as being viable and being able to help the community.
The First Reformed United Church of Christ is a partner of Allied Churches. Pastor Philip Myers has preached to many homeless people before, including to Clance one October morning. While he wishes he could help more, he says some churches, including his own, are unable to.
Unfortunately, a lot of congregations, they're struggling to meet their own budgets. A lot of mainline Protestant churches are declining. That's the trend. And as they struggle with their own finances, unfortunately, oftentimes the first thing to be cut out is benevolence.
So as churches are struggling, Allied Churches are going to continue to struggle.
Fallout, yes. Yeah.
So what's plan B for them?
I think they have to become less and less dependent on congregational donations.
Though Allied Churches plans on remaining open for now, Elon Community Church pastor Randy Orwig says the long-term problems concern him. His church partners with the shelter annually and donated $5,600 last year. Orwig was surprised when he heard the news in September.
All of a sudden we get this word that there's no money. So that was a shock.
When were those initial telltale signs that the shelter wasn't going well? When were those bells kind of going off?
I would probably tell you January of 2017 when I first joined the board is when I realized that there was something wrong.
So why was it made publicized so much later than that?
You can only cry wolf so many times, right? The sky is falling kind of thing. And then people don't listen to that anymore. We've always had a challenge in securing enough funds.
This needs to be a full community effort, and I feel very strongly about this because I've seen it work very successfully in other areas, and I don't know why it's not working here, but I think part of it is that we just were told everything's fine, and then everything wasn't fine.
When did you find out things weren't fine?
When you did. when
When
we
that
all did,
article
when it
came
all
out?
hit. Yeah.
If you had known before, you as a pastor and Elon Community Church would have stepped
Oh
in.
yeah, well, long.
Do you think
time
other
before.
churches would have?
Oh, absolutely. I have a lot of experience in all the different communities I've been in working with homeless shelters, and I have to say, Allied Churches has probably been the most perplexing.
Both pastors say they are frustrated with Baker's lack of transparency. At a church consortium on November 27th, which we were kicked out of, Orwig said Baker had his guard up. That raised red flags for Orwig.
But I think it was still a very kind of defense maneuver to let us know that it's okay, we're all in kind of crisis mode. And I think they want to get us out of crisis mode, but on the other hand, sometimes you can almost say we're not needed, like everything's under control. And that's something that we want to be very concerned about.
When we asked for a follow-up interview to address these accusations, Baker declined. Allied Churches has gone through 3 leadership changes in the 7 years Orwig has been at Elon Community Church. The pastor says the lack of consistent leadership makes it hard to build a relationship with the organization.
That's what I mean by perplexing. We would get a different kind of style each time. And so it was a very different kind of experience. And quite honestly, had we known that there could have been more potential for this to fall through, we would have been much more involved.
Moving forward over the next year, over the next few months, what do you hope your relationship is with Allied Churches? Do you think there will be any changes from the past?
Oh, it's already changed, but the problem is that who do you relate to? When you have an ever-changing group of faces, that's not easy, because you build relationships with people and not with just an organization.
Given all of these issues that are happening right now, what's your incentive to donate?
It's my call. It's my call of faith.
Even
I don't have
through
any
all the
choice.
frustration?
Yeah. I guess it's like anything. You can take things for granted until they're gone or till they're almost gone, and then you have to realize you have to do something more.
I do want to challenge our leadership to make advanced or larger gifts to Allied Churches moving forward, which I think they're open to. They just want to see what action plans, what strategies Allied Churches have.
Do you expect that from them?
From Allied Churches? I think they have to provide that. I don't think this congregation is unique in that way. I think a lot of people will expect that.
Baker knows the problems are far from over. While the donations helped, that money will eventually run out.
But my question would be, have we failed as a community if Allied Churches closed? Did we not do all that we could do to provide for these individuals? Many of these individuals come in and in 30 days, they're back on their feet. Do we want to lose that? I think the answer is we don't.
Sandra Lawson has worn a lot of hats in her life. She's been a personal trainer, a military police officer, musician, and sociologist. But her newest hat is a yarmulke, the traditional Jewish head cover. She wears it here at Elon University, where she's challenging perceptions of what it means to be a rabbi.
There are people who, who probably don't see me as a rabbi, do not see me as a Jew. And there's also, on the other side, people who are like curious or need more proof, maybe.
And it's no surprise that people are curious. Lawson doesn't look like most rabbis, or even most Jews for that matter. Only 11% of American Jews aren't white, and Lawson knows she breaks the mold.
No longer technically in the margins. I'm now at the center of the Jewish community. But I still live on the margins of our social life. So what that means for me is I see things. I see things that my colleagues may not see. I experience the world as a rabbi very differently than my male colleagues. And I also think that makes me more innovative.
Lawson was drawn to Judaism the first time she stepped in a synagogue 14 years ago. At the time, she was working as a personal trainer, and a friend brought her along to a service. Fast forward to this past June when she was hired as the Associate Chaplain for Jewish Life at Elon, despite being a convert to the religion and having only become a rabbi earlier that month.
I think we'd have hired her even if she hadn't been a rabbi. Her creativity, her ability to engage in social media, her ability to kind of be part of the community and to shape our community.
As the university chaplain, Jan Fuller played an integral role in hiring the new rabbi. She was looking for someone who might help break from tradition, and with Lawson, that's exactly what she found.
We didn't want somebody who just would come and fit in. We wanted somebody to come in and challenge us.
One way she made an impression was with her innovative approach to teaching the Torah. During Lawson's journey in rabbinical school, she started dabbling in Snapchat, using its features and filters to dive into Judaism's holiest text. It earned her the nickname the Snapchat Rabbi and helped put her on Elon's radar.
Light can push away darkness, and Hanukkah is about hope and pushing away despair.
So that is something that my colleagues just would not have even thought to do, because the old model is you want to teach Torah, you do it in your synagogue, people come to your synagogue. We don't live in that world anymore. We don't live in a world where just because you built a building or just because you built a Hillel center or Hillel house that people are going to come. You have to figure out ways to get people to come to you, or you go to them.
Students say that her services don't always look like the ones they're used to, but for Sarah Wasserman, it's a welcome change.
So I have some friends that have said different things post-services, like, oh, there was too much English or this and that, and I think people get so comfortable with what they grew up with, so it can be difficult for people to accept change.
But Lawson's way of looking at the religion hasn't always been met with open arms. When she runs into pushback, though, it doesn't slow her down.
I've been praying, for example, in a synagogue, and the person next to me is noticeably uncomfortable and has interrupted my prayer to find out why I'm there, why I'm praying. I have read from the Torah scroll, which is what people do on and Shabbat morning, and I've had people ask me, how did you learn to read Hebrew? And I just say I went to school.
Have there been people who don't see you as a legitimate rabbi? Have there been people who kind of delegitimize you being a rabbi just because of the way you look or the way you are?
If an Orthodox guy were to come in here and say, you're not a rabbi, I'm like, I am. Next. Like, I don't need to engage with that rabbi about my legitimacy. It's not something I feel like I need to prove.
Not only is she a black and female rabbi, but Lawson also identifies as lesbian. She met her wife, Susan Hurry, in 2012 through an online dating site and got married in 2015.
So I stalked Sandra for about a week or so on OkCupid, and then you can see when people look at your profile, so I was afraid I was going to look like a stalker, so I eventually sent her a message.
She says the Jewish community has been accepting of her orientation, but she's the first black and openly lesbian graduate of rabbinical school in the United States.
So what role does, you're married to a rabbi, right? What role does religion play in your relationship?
So let me tell you, first of all, Sandra's online profile for OkCupid, religion, not very serious. Does that make sense? No.
Lawson was first drawn to the religion because of the people who made her feel welcome. And now she has a chance to extend that feeling to her students, like Mackenzie Martinez.
Having a woman of color, a woman who identifies in the LGBTQIA community as a rabbi is something really empowering, I think, and is really neat to kind of have, because that brings a really different perspective of Judaism.
How did you go on to become someone who embraced religion so strongly that you decided to be a leader within it?
What drew me into Judaism was not God. What drew me into Judaism was community. And so I'm one of those people that sort of reminds people that Judaism is about being together and being a community of people. If I had walked into a different community that wasn't so embracing, or I didn't feel like I fit in, I wouldn't be Jewish today.
You are the kind of foremost Jewish leader, or at least a very prominent leader for Jewish students at Elon, and you've only been a rabbi for a little less than a year. That's a lot of kind of weight on your shoulders.
Yes.
What does that feel like?
Fun, scary, exciting. Any other adjectives you want to throw in it? Let me put it this way. So you're in college. Maybe you played football in college. Maybe you were on the team, and then you graduate from college, and then you just get a job on the football team. But now you're the starting quarterback, and you've only been there a week.
Just 2 months into her time as the rabbi on campus, tragedy struck in Pittsburgh. A gunman opened fire on a synagogue, killing 11 worshipers. Nationwide, the Jewish community was left reeling. And right here at Elon, students came to her for guidance.
We're praying for a complete recovery, both physically and mentally, from those who have suffered from this traumatic ordeal.
I have the privilege of being a witness to wherever people are, and people trust me enough to share that, and that means everything.
Lawson sang Kaddish, the mourner's prayer, in a service to remember the victims of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. While it's a traditional part of the Jewish faith, Lawson's beliefs aren't.
I think things happen that no matter how much control we try to have over things, if you're putting energy into something, the universe sort of works out that way.
You say the universe, but I mean, as a religious leader, you think there was some divine going on, or do you think, how do you think that influenced things?
I think that you don't have to believe in a deity to be Jewish. So you don't have to believe in God to be Jewish. You don't have to believe in God to be a rabbi.
And now that she is a rabbi, she's figured out exactly what it is she believes in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in God?
I do. My concept of God is the good that we have in the world, the good things that people are doing, nature, the sunrise, like everything that we celebrate. It's not limited by a being.
Although she wasn't particularly religious during her childhood, she recalls falling asleep in white Christian churches and loving the music in black churches, but the long sermons made it hard for her to pay attention, and some of the messages she heard left a bad impression.
The few times we did go to church, I would hear preachers, saying sexist things or homophobic things.
Now she's a leader in a religion that speaks to her. Although she's a minority within Judaism, she says that gives her a distinct advantage, and she wants to use her perspective to change the conversation.
When I started to become a rabbi, I didn't see the Jewish community very involved in racial and social justice issues. Could be where I was living. But like after Ferguson, for example, I saw more in the Jewish community step up and recognize, oh, this is a Jewish issue because we have Black Jews in our congregation. We can't sit on the sidelines and act like nothing's happening.
What do you think about the conversation that everyone goes, oh, a black, lesbian, vegan, rabbi, all of this? Do you want that kind of conversation? Do you want people to be thinking that you are something special or bringing something new to the Jewish faith? Or do you want people to just see you as, I'm just a rabbi like every other one?
Both. I think, so first of all, the students that I interact with, I don't really think they care. I think that they care that they have a rabbi and that I'm engaged with them. And that's really good because we are raising a generation of Jews to look past whatever their grandfather's rabbi was. One of the things that I want is I want the larger Jewish community to understand that the rabbis who are coming up today are a diverse group of people. Many of them are people of color. Many of them are not straight. Many of them are might be married to non-Jews. My difference, my diversity, is helping people to become aware of that.
So now that you have finished rabbinical school and you are at the beginnings of your practicing being a rabbi, where do you see yourself 10, 15, so many odd years down the line?
Still a rabbi, yeah. I feel like I hit the jackpot. Like I feel like I got the right job somehow. I mean, everything that I set out to do, I've done, and that makes me feel really good. And I know that there's like even more exciting things ahead.